Good evening and welcome to Room 1 here at Loughborough Students' Union. With you today are your candidates for the Loughborough constituency, all here to convince you, and here in the audience and at home, here today that they deserve to be your MP at this year's LSU General Election question time. Hello, good evening. We're here once again in Room 1 for this, another LSU General Election question time, the third in 5 years. In one of the closest seats in the country, one of the individuals here on this stage this evening could determine the entire makeup of the House of Commons if they were the one seat in it. Whether Boris Johnson, Jeremy Corbyn, Joe Swinson or others hold the key to number 10 this year. From left to right on stage this evening we have the pleasure of welcoming Stuart Brady from the Labour Party. We have Queenie Tea, an independent candidate. We have Wes Walton of the Green Party. We have Sharpe of the Liberal Democrats. And Jane Hunt, the Conservative Party candidate. The rules tonight are simple. Each candidate will get 30 seconds opening and closing statements. And there'll be 4 topics: Brexit, education and the employment, the environment, and Loughborough itself. So let's get right into it with tonight's opening statements. Stuart.
Am I standing for this? Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Thanks so much for coming. This election is for your future. And that's why you need to stay here and vote on Thursday and vote Labour. It's a 2-horse race in Loughborough between me and the Conservative candidate. We are offering you another say on Brexit. We are offering you the most decisive action on climate change of any of the parties. We are offering you a tuition fee policy that gets rid of tuition fees for any remaining years you have in university. There are 3 fully costed policies. And importantly, we're going to take action to save our NHS. We know we've got a mental health crisis and Labour's going to address it.
Thank you. Queenie Tea.
Yeah, okay. Just got my mouth full of biscuit. Sorry. So, hello, I'm Queenie Tea, and on the 12th of December, I'm going to be having a party, as are all the rest of these lovely folk. And what I'd like you to do is, if none of these parties, now they're very good at parties, Jane down there has been having a good party for about 9 years. Then we have Wesley. He's really good at parties because he's a student. And then we have Ian and Stuart. Now they're new to running parties, but I imagine they're very good on the dance floor.
Thank you very much.
So thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much. Wes Walton.
Hi, I'm Wes. Thank you all for coming. I'm standing because the Green Party's vision of the future is a goal to strive for, a future where we cooperate with other nations to solve the problems that we face, a future where individuals feel empowered by the government, not forever let down, a future where quality of life and happiness are put at the heart of policy making and not forever chasing economic growth and GDP.
Thank you very much. Ian.
Hi, I'm Sharpe. I'm the Liberal Democrat candidate, and only a few months ago in the Euro elections, Loughborough voted us the most important Remain party, and in fact we got twice the votes that the Labour Party got. So thanks, Stuart, but we do this every time, he knows what I'm going to say. Right, so I'm standing to fight for the NHS and social care, to fight for our schools, colleges, universities, and for lifelong learning, to fight the mess in universal credit, to fight climate change, and to fight Brexit. I'm Ian Sharpe. I'm your Liberal Democrat Remain candidate.
Thank you, Ian. And finally, Jane.
Thank you very much. Hello, I'm Jane Hunt. I am local. I've lived here since 1995, and during that time I've been the Borough Councillor in Loughborough and Panton Ward for 12 years, between 2003 and 2015. and that is half the campus. So I have been the borough councillor for half the campus for 12 years during that time. I want to make you an offer. Inward investment is one of the things I look after at the Borough Council, and inward investment is about brains, skills and knowledge, and we want to keep you in Loughborough. Please, please do let me know what exactly you would like from the area so that we can get you to stay here, keep your businesses here, keep your brains here, and form businesses here. Thank you.
Thank you. Well then, thank you very much to all of our candidates there. Let's start with our first topic, Brexit. Okay, so our first question sent in today is, what is the point of getting Brexit done if it won't solve students' issues? Should we start with you, Wes?
Oh, I stood up. We're not supposed to stand up. Sorry. There is no getting Brexit done, and that's a lie told by a Conservative government. Getting Brexit done means almost years of negotiations. And so, firstly, getting Brexit done is a lie. Secondly, remaining in the EU is the best thing for students. I can tell you personally, I happen to also be a student, that being able to travel the EU, get jobs in the EU is kind of what made me want to become a student in the first place.
Ian.
What a very good question. What's the point of Brexit? Yeah, what is the point of Brexit? Brexit was sold as a dream or a fantasy. The Tory government has spent 3.5 years trying to work out what on earth Brexit is and then trying to deliver it. As we can see, they've failed. Every one of the promises that we were given about what Brexit would bring has been knocked off. In fact, all we're left with now is, 17.4 million were conned into voting for it, so we better do it. If you're done with Brexit, get Brexit gone. The only way to go forward is to get Brexit gone through a people's vote. And that will be great for the economy and for students. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. We need to unleash the potential of Great Britain, and that is through getting Brexit done right now. And then the problems of students that you're talking about, well, it's your future. And it's a wider world. It's great that the EU's involved. Yes, absolutely. We will be involved and working with the EU very closely. But it's a wider global world and global challenges ahead. We want to do things that will help you and help this country across the whole world, not just the European Union, but yes, the European Union as well.
Stuart.
Get Brexit done is not a thing. Now, I've had a very varied career. I started off as a professional rugby player, and I'm now a barrister. Between times, I worked on international trade talks. Now, let me tell you, trade negotiations go on for years and years and years, particularly when it's between a big bloc like the European Union and a country like the UK. So this is just the end of the beginning. The Get Brexit Done slogan or soundbite is completely bogus. This is very important to you guys because you benefit from the Erasmus programme, you benefit from massive funding under the Horizon 2020 programme to all the research that goes on this campus. So it's massively important you guys get another say. That's why the people's vote is saying vote for Stuart Brady here in Loughborough to get that people's vote, because the Lib Dems got under 4% last time. So if you want that people's vote, you've got to vote for us. Now, this is why it's important. Because the Tory version of Brexit, as it stands, it has a border going up the middle of the Irish Sea. Now, you guys may not remember, but I do, when the Good Friday Agreement was brokered. It is a peace treaty, okay? And it was a hard fought for peace treaty, fought for by the Labour government, and the Tories did a bit before that. But the sanctity of that is really important. If you're levying customs tariffs under the current deal, you jeopardise that entire peace treaty. You also cut us off, you cut us adrift from the European economic system. So that's why our policy is to negotiate a new deal that keeps us part of the European economic system, doesn't bankrupt the country, gives you the prospects you want, and then we'll put that to a people's vote. And in that campaign, I will campaign for Remain, because I know after 3 years, that there is not a version of Brexit which we can get through Parliament that is going to satisfy our economic needs or the needs of our future generations or the need to combat climate change. Now, Jane can talk about global challenges. They are much better thought through the European Union seat in the WTO, through European Union action on climate change, through all of the trade deals around the globe, like in Japan, like in South Korea, like we go on and on, like Canada, that we currently benefit from. Because the alternative is this. The alternative is years of negotiation with the European Union with more and more uncertainty for business, years and years of negotiating with the US, and they want access to every market going, to the NHS, to our drugs markets, and markets we've not even thought of. So if you want that instability, if you want our politics to be completely clogged up by Brexit-related matters, vote for Jane Hunt. If you want to get it done, if you want another say, then you've got to vote for me here in Loughborough.
I think we should give Jane a slight rebuttal on that one.
Thank you very much indeed. So yes, we were held back by the European Union because of the deals that you were talking about that you were perhaps involved in, maybe, from what you've said. So, for example, the Canada agreement took 7 years to negotiate with the EU. What we need to be able to do is do faster deals across the whole of the world and really, really get the benefit of that, be on the front foot.
Go to Ian and then Queenie afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting talking about trade deals because 44% of our exports go to the European Union, and perhaps even more importantly, 55% of our manufactured goods are exported to the European Union. But beyond that, 57% of our exports go to countries with which the EU has already got trade deals. And it's ironic, we all talk about what we're going to do, so I'm not going to criticise the other parties, but when we talk about how long it's going to take to negotiate trade arrangements, just imagine it's taken us 3.5 years not to get a withdrawal agreement, and that's just through our own parliament. The countries that the EU doesn't have trade arrangements with are principally China and the USA, and there's a very good reason why the USA has not got a trade agreement with the EU. That's because Trump pulled out of the trade agreement. And the reason he did that is that he does not believe in multilateral organisations. He knows that the USA is the single most important economy in the world. He wants to pick off each country one by one because he knows the might of the United States can squash them. So when Boris goes trip-tropping over there, he's going to get squashed by Trump. So I hope you better start enjoying chlorinated chicken, and salmonella, because that's what you get from chlorinated chicken.
Queenie, what's your take?
Oh, sorry, I've forgotten about the mic. I tell you, I've had my fill of biscuit. And if I was to be holding a party, which I am, of course, I wouldn't have biscuit at my parties. Or if I was, I wouldn't have the hard. The soft, well, I'm not sure. And really, you need a good cup of tea to swill your biscuits down, don't you? And I tell you, I've been stuffing my face with these biscuits and I need a good cup of tea now. So I tell you, Wesley, you seem a dapper type of chap. Could you lean down there and get my water? Because I'm quite parched. So I think what we all need when it comes to biscuit is a good cup of tea. I don't know where my water is. Thank you. That's all I've got to say. It's down here. Stuart needs to get me my water. Stuart, could you get my water? Oh, thank you. That's all I'm saying. I wish I'd had tea. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to chip in this question, or should we go to the next one?
Yeah, I think the other thing to say is we talk a lot about trade, but also, climate change. That is obviously a worldwide issue, and we have to collaborate with our nearest neighbours. The solution to intermittency in renewable energy is through sharing electricity across the continent. We want to spread European values around the world. That can only be done in partnership with the European Union. We got all clever and stroppy with the Chinese because of what they did.
What we'll do is we'll come on to the environment and these values later on in the programme. But we're now going to go on to the next question, which is from the audience. Is Harry Morton here? Harry Morton here? Fantastic, you've got a question for us. Just wait for Rahul to give the mic to you.
Will Brexit hinder the opportunities for students wanting to study or work abroad in the EU?
Thank you very much. Harry, who would like to take this one first? Yeah, Stuart.
Well, yes, it will if we go ahead of it. Now, I would like to see, us to remain in the EU, but if we come out, to have access to the Erasmus programme, which is what you're referring to. Now, our proposal for Brexit for a long time has been customs union, close single market relationship. Now that enables the sort of collaboration you're talking about, in my view. What you need to realise is under the current so-called deal, no deal Brexit is still on the table. If they haven't negotiated anything by the end of next year, which I consider to be almost impossible to do, no deal is still on the table. So Erasmus, yes, definitely if we stay in, our campaign for Remain to protect your Erasmus access. But also, I think if we have our version of Brexit, which doesn't bankrupt the economy and looks after your future more than the other version, then we'd seek to maintain access to Erasmus.
Wes, have you got a take on this?
Yes. I feel wholeheartedly agree with Stuart. It's a case of being in the EU guarantees that, and leaving puts that in jeopardy. And whether we get it in the deal, who knows?
Ian?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Of course, the answer is it will completely affect education and also your future careers. But also, I think it's worth pointing out that, of course, a lot of the research that's undertaken in the UK universities is under the auspices of the framework programmes from the European Union. And our universities thrive because A, they're able to input into the shape of those research programmes, but also academics can freely move across Europe to support the world-class research that goes on in our country. But turning to your point, because Erasmus is a perfectly valid point and a very important point, but I mean, I worked for a French company, and myself and my colleagues worked all over Europe without a second glance. I mean, colleagues would get a promotion and go to work in Germany, France, Italy, without any consequence or thought. Yes, of course. And if we had a need for a certain skill or expertise, we could move that person from across another side, from another part of the company in Europe. Now, that is not going to be possible because some of the more reactionary components of the Tory party love to say, oh, we're celebrating the end of freedom of movement. I'm sure every one of you in this room doesn't celebrate that because it's your freedom of movement that they're destroying. So absolutely, Brexit is a disaster and it'll be a disaster for you.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you.
Thank you. Brexit is not a disaster. Brexit will open doors and open opportunities out across the whole world. My understanding, by the way, is Erasmus is included in the deal. But the opportunities for what we're looking at across the whole of the world and coming into the UK and into Loughborough in particular. Let's talk about Loughborough for a moment, because you are Loughborough students. And we have the formation of one of the biggest science parks, the biggest science park, I believe, in Europe. We have Charnwood Campus, Life Sciences Hub, and we have all the sports and science and engineering that you're looking at this university. This university is a massive asset to this whole country, not just the area, but it most certainly is to the area as well. We have the opportunity, we have people who come to this particular campus from all over the world to understand your expertise, to carry out research and development and to work with you. You have a fantastic opportunity just by having the name of this university on your CV for the future. And so, no, it won't stop your opportunities, because why would it? You've got Loughborough University on your CV. That would help you across the world.
We're going to wrap this question up, so the last one, Queenie, do you want to say?
Oh, hello. So, yes, for me, I'd like to just explain that I'm a piece of art. I'm a piece of performance art. And from what I understand, in all sorts, it's not just about, of course it's about you students, but it's also about the impact that it's having on the arts as well, and all sorts of things. I certainly wouldn't be able to move around as much as I'm able to move around, even though I am 89. So yes, I think what's important is to understand the impact it's having on many, many different areas of movement, of all sorts of different things. Movements of biscuits, for example, but the movements of very important things. So yes, thank you.
Thank you. So to wrap up this short debate on Brexit, we're going to go to a question sent in by Chris. Thank you, Chris. How would you vote in a second referendum if that was to come about? Would you listen to the students on the ground at universities like Loughborough? One quick answer each, and we'll start with you, Ian.
Remain.
Leave.
Stuart.
Remain, and you've got to vote Labour to get the chance to vote that way.
A biscuit.
And finally, Wes.
Remain.
You remain. Well, thank you very much. That's Brexit all wrapped up. I think we've clearly covered everything today. I know. But we're going to move on to our next topic, which is education and employment. Okay, so our first question. Many students struggle to afford university. So should tuition fees be scrapped and grants reinstated? We'll start with you, Queenie.
Yes, of course. I think, don't students just live on beans? Baked beans and cold cups of tea. I'd like to ensure that they can drink lots of hot tea, and as much as they can get of that, as hot tea and as many posh biscuits as possible. So I would ensure that they can afford those, because that's very important. Because what we need good people trained in lots of different industries, and then the way that they'll get there is having a good diet and drinking lots of cups of tea. Because all good industries, doctors, nurses, teachers, everybody, engineers, scientists, they live on tea. That's what gets them through the day. So I'd ensure that you've all got the money for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Wes?
Yes, the student fees are ridiculous. I'm currently earning interest on mine. And the Green Party set out to backdate our dismissal of student debts all the way to dates have gone, sorry. But all the way back to when they started at £9,000, we go one step further than Labour and make sure that everyone that paid £9,000 sees that debt scrapped, because it's just far from ridiculous. I currently also benefit from a student grant, and I can tell you it makes life a hell of a lot easier. So we would seek to reinstate those as well.
Ian, your view on tuition fees?
It would be lovely, wouldn't it, just to wipe off student debt and tuition fees. Politics is actually about making choices, because funds are not unlimited. In a country where we have a crisis in the health service, we have a crisis in social care, we have a crisis in universal credit, we have people living off food banks. I'm sorry, no. I'm going to be brave and say no again. I mean, when Labour introduced the tuition fees, and when Labour instigated the Brown Report, which resulted in the increase in student fees, they had a degree of fiscal responsibility. I'm sorry, but eliminating tuition fees cannot be a priority when we've got kids going hungry and homelessness. And that's the hard response. Now, I actually think there are some egregious features of the current student tuition fees arrangements. The interest rate is ridiculously high. It should be cut. I think that £9,000 plus, was it 1950 or whatever it is now, is too much. I mean, all the time you've got some vice-chancellors who are now paying themselves $500,000 a year on their fantastic financial performance off the back of students' tuition fees. That is ridiculous. But as you know, there is a review of the level of tuition fees, and I think there is certainly scope to reduce them. But I'm sorry, there are bigger priorities and there are limited funds, and we just do not have cash to spend on these sort of things. So I'm afraid, yes, tuition fees need to continue.
Jane?
Thank you. I am very old. I went to university quite a long time ago when only about 5% of the UK population went to university. And now it's nearer 50, in fact, I think it is, in fact, 50% of the population of the UK go to university. And so I'm afraid it's just unaffordable, it would be unsustainable at those figures. So what we've done is we've looked at the Auger review, and we've implemented most of the other parts of it. And in this manifesto, we have committed to looking at reducing the interest rate on the loans. And I think that's an important thing to do. You also have to bear in mind, though, and forgive me, I'm probably preaching to the converted here because you understand how these things work. But during the Labour government years, you had to start repaying your loan at only £15,000 salary per annum, and now it's up to £21,000. I personally think it should be higher, but it's £21,000 for the moment. And also then on the average fees, by the way, is £7,500 across the UK. The average payback then on a £21,000 loan is £30 a month. And I think £30 a month is, I think, a good opportunity in terms of opportunity cost for you. You have those skills, you have that knowledge, you have that degree that will then get you, hopefully, higher wages and better opportunities in the future, whether you go for, you're particularly keen on getting a higher salary, or whether you want to do something that's particularly vocational or special to you. You have that greater opportunity.
Thank you. Stuart, what's the Labour point of view on this?
So Jane's gone into some figures there, and I'm going to put some more figures onto this. Average debt for students, £44,000 when they graduate. The poorest students, average debt, £53,000. Now, what Ian wants you to believe, and I think what Jane wants you to believe, is that there is no alternative to this, because this is the way it's been for a while. There's no way we can afford anything else. Well, France and Germany, they don't have any meaningful fees at all, and they're similar size economies to ours. When I went to university, I paid £1,000. When Jane went to university, I think she probably paid nothing, and probably with Ian.
I didn't go to university.
Thanks for the correction. But the reality is that if it's possible in France, if it's possible in Germany, if it's possible for previous generations, why is it not possible now? We have the principle in this country of free universal education up to 18. Now, we're trying to take our economy forward, and the way we do that is through having a higher skilled workforce. That means going to university. So the principle is set. Why not extend it to 21, 22? In other words, 3 or 4 years of higher education. Why is it fair that you have average of £44,000 of debt when debt for other generations was much, much lower? We don't think that that is right. So that's why we've got a fully costed plan to deal with it. We've said how we're going to pay for it. We're going to put up corporation tax at 27%, so that's still below 2010 levels, still below the level in USA, still below the level in Germany. Because we think that you will get into debt anyway through your living expenses. We'll give grants to those that need it most. So you already have skin in the game. There's no need to penalise you more to mean you're starting off life with a hand behind your back. Home ownership for people in their late 20s has gone down massively over the past decade or so. Part of that must be because of the massive debt that people are graduating with. Interest rates are 6.5%. It's utterly ruinous. We think the principle of free education is sound. Now, I don't want you to believe their view that there's no alternative, because there is an alternative.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you. We're going to very quickly go to both Jane and Ian, as they both said they want to speak, but very quickly, and then we'll go on to the next question.
Thank you very much. The Olga Review, even amongst peers, didn't say to go to free tuition. Nothing is free. Nothing is free. It is not free fees for students, because you'll end up paying, when you are the older generation, you'll end up paying anyway through taxes, much higher taxes with the Labour government. So please don't think it's free. The government doesn't have any money. It's your taxes that pays the bills.
And Ian, very quickly.
Yeah, I think it's also worth pointing out that the Institute of Fiscal Studies said that the Liberal Democrat mandate was the only manifesto was the only one that added up, and that there was absolutely no way that the Labour manifesto can be delivered. I think it's also wrong to try and draw international comparisons, because in France, the Grande École, which are the top universities, certainly aren't free.
We're going to go on the next question. We'll come to you first in this next question, Stuart. We've got Naomi in the audience, who's got a question.
Sadly, Naomi couldn't be with us tonight, but she's very kindly nominated me to read her question on her behalf, so bear with me. What are your thoughts on the UCU strike which has taken place over the last 2 weeks?
And we'll start with you, Stuart.
The university sector has had a massive casualisation. Now, let me explain what that means. It means that people used to have good long-term contracts to develop their careers in academia. And I know that around the world, people still have good long-term contracts, which are an attractive choice to go into an academia. Now, we need our brightest and best to stay in the universities, do PhDs, and then go on to teach the undergraduates. So that's one of the things the UCU is striking about, is the casualisation of higher education. I massively support them in that, because it's just not sustainable to have people essentially part of the gig economy jumping contract to contract. We need to have much better terms so people can plan for the long term to be in our education system to develop the high-skilled jobs we need in the future. Because in this country, our productivity levels are poor relative to France. We need to have the brightest and the best in the universities improving our skills, improving our workforce to ensure we get that. There's another side issue around pension calculation. I don't pretend to be an expert on that, but I know the maths has been done and there's a dispute there to be had, but I do support the point around attacking casualisation of higher education employment.
Queenie.
I believe that they need to have a good place to have a kettle and to be able to sit in an office and know that it's their office and that they can stay there for a little bit and maybe for a long time, maybe years and years, and have a teacup that gets a sort of, like, maybe have a little bit of mould in it because they've been there for so long. And yes, I sort of think that really, and that they would be able to afford nice biscuits.
Wes.
I am in complete solidarity with the UCU strikes. It's unbelievable that some staff are worried about not having a job in the future, and that shouldn't be the case at university. It's unbelievable that pensions are being ruined for the younger staff, and you want universities to, you want universities to ensure that staff feel catered for, and that is the case, and that isn't the case currently. So, in complete solidarity.
Ian.
Well, I think one of the points of the tuition fee was to ensure that the university sector was independent from government interference, to deliver, so that they were able to be liberated to deliver a great independent education. So clearly, something is going very badly wrong when academics are on strike, and unmotivated academics are clearly not ideal for good education. How, as I said earlier, we can be in a situation where the teaching staff are on strike and dissatisfied when vice-chancellors are paying themselves film star salaries. I think that's extremely concerning. So, yeah, very concerned about the strike. To be candid with you, I don't know the nth degree of detail, but I think that the points that have been raised earlier, I'd certainly be happy to join with.
And finally, Jane.
Well, listening to my student colleagues on campus, I don't think it's been that very effective, actually. My understanding was that there was a meeting called for all students to go to understand exactly what the strike was about, and nobody turned up. However, I do think that people should continue dialogue. So negotiation and understanding of both sides is important in this.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go to another question. But firstly, does anyone have any comments they want to say from the floor? No? Okay. Very, very quickly.
Just very quickly, just a pure thought. It's quite interesting, the timing of the strike as well, given it's in the middle of a general election.
Okay. We're going to go to a final question on education. Very quickly, one of you each, and we'll start with Wes on this one. Oh, have we? Sorry, I didn't see it. Yes. We'll give you a mic first. Be at the front there. Sorry, I didn't see you.
Ian, do you not recognise that the reason many people voted to leave the EU was because they felt downtrodden and they felt real despair because of the austerity policies that your party enabled in coalition? Do you also recognise that centrism will do nothing to fix that in future?
No. Austerity came about because of the economic collapse, which is surely obvious to everybody. I think what's important to remember is that the Labour government, and Alistair Darling, who I'm sure is persona non grata now, but used to be in the mainstream of the Labour Party, had an austerity plan which was very much in line with the plan that was delivered by the coalition. The Liberal Democrats did mitigate the Conservative austerity plan, and indeed the plan, as I say, that was actually delivered by the coalition was very similar to the one that Alistair Darling put forward. Why did people vote for Brexit? Well, certainly I think it's very true that there was a lot of promises made that Brexit would somehow be a magic, the philosopher's stone that was going to transform all the problems we have in our country, whereas actually it's going to exacerbate them. So am I proud of what we did in coalition? Well, certainly some of the things we had to do were not nice. I think it's true to say that had we not done them, if Labour had actually got a few more seats, they would have done the same. Clearly, the current Labour regime would want you to believe a counterfactual that somehow the politics of Venezuela or Greece would have delivered some magic solution without austerity. And I'd equally ask you to look at what's happened since we left the coalition. I think that we were the adults in the room that kept the lunatic fringe of the Conservative Party on a short leash. And we've seen what's happened subsequent to that when Rees-Mogg and his mates get a chance to get anywhere near the levers of power. So, yeah, I think we did the right thing. Thank you.
Very, very quickly, because then you have 30 seconds, Stuart.
I think it's important to raise. There were many decisions made during that period to cut from certain sectors of society. And often it was disabled people, people on benefits that suffered the most, our NHS. Whereas there were inheritance tax breaks, there were massive subsidies for people earning up to 60k to buy a new house. So there were clear political decisions made during that period. Now, the big story of the 20th century is invest in order to grow the economy. That is what we are talking about. It's not loony left politics, it's straightforward European social democracy. You invest to grow areas like Loughborough, building on our engineering heritage, building on all the skills we've got here. It's an investment programme to grow the economy, to pay down our debts that have got much larger under the Tories, I have to say.
Thank you, Stuart. We'll go for 30 seconds to you, Jane, and then we'll go on to the next question.
Just quickly. It was the decisions that were made before 2010 that caused the economic crisis. It was a global economic crisis, but Gordon Brown was a key player in that global setup. Do you remember the letter, everybody, from the Treasury? We have no money left as we arrived. There was no money to be had. This country was essentially bankrupt. It was in huge debt, more debt than it had been in since before the Second World War. We really, really had to make savings where we could. And we as a whole country, as a whole nation, achieved that, every single individual.
Thank you very much. We're now going to go on to our next topic of the environment. Okay, so this question's been sent in to us. Climate change is now the biggest issue affecting young people in the country. How will you and your party ensure the world will still be here for us and our children? And we're going to start with you, Ian.
Right, so absolutely right. Climate change is now, I think everybody recognises that there is climate change and that it's generated by human activity. Our plan is to have 80% of all electricity generated from renewable sources by 2030. We're going to stop the sale of internal combustion engine cars by the end of by 2030. But also we need to address the consumption of electricity, so we're going to insulate all existing properties and raise the standards in terms of insulation for new properties.
Jane.
Thank you. Well, first of all, we are the #1 global country that has decided to go net zero by 2050. We're the first country that's done that in the world, and we're going to make that legally binding. So we're already ahead in many respects, but we do need to do more, absolutely. I absolutely agree about the issues with climate change. We're going to end the use of unabated coal by 2025. That's quite important to us because we've got a coal-fired power station just down the road. Those CO2 emissions come this way, as would the incinerator if it was built in Shepshed. I will fight against that, of course. We've already got 400,000 low-carbon jobs in the UK, and we're aiming for 2 million classed as green-collar jobs. These will be amazing for Loughborough University students as they come out of work. out into the workplace rather, because the skills that you already have will be absolutely on the money for that. But we've decarbonised faster than any G20 country, and we're down 29% in the last 10 years. There is much more to do, but some people will tell you, people will say to you, oh no, you need to do it faster, it needs to be by 2030. Well, yes, we need to do as much as we can, as fast as we can, but you can't reach net zero without doing an awful lot with trees. Now we're going to plant 30 million trees, and we're going to look at peatlands and restore peatlands. But it takes about 10 years, between 10 and 15 years actually, for a tree to grow enough to sequester carbon. You need those trees to be doing that in order to get to net zero. And so it isn't possible to get to net zero in that timescale. It's possible to get lower, and we're all talking about getting lower, but it's not possible to get to net zero rather by 2030.
Stuart.
Well, Labour's got a proud record on climate change. The Kyoto Protocol was the first major international treaty that set binding targets on climate change. We were the signatories to that from the UK and played a big part in pushing that through. We then passed the Climate Change Act in the last Labour government before 2010, and that was the first act that set binding targets. So we've got a good record on this, and you may have been watching the news today, and the Friends of the Earth did a review of all of the manifestos, including the Green one, and said that we had the greenest manifesto in the Labour Party. And that's because we've got a big investment programme which follows on from us declaring a climate emergency in Parliament in May. That was a Labour effort to call that climate emergency. So if something's a climate emergency, it needs emergency measures. That's why we're dedicating $250 billion over 10 years to decarbonising our economy through a big investment programme. This area, you may not know, used to have big employment in power generation kit down at the Brush, the facility next to the train stations. We've got a heritage here of doing the sorts of things we're talking about. Intelligent energy, they make hydrogen fuel cells here on the campus. So we are very well placed here to benefit from that $250 billion injection under our Green New Deal, our Green Industrial Revolution. And for people who didn't go to university, or maybe for university graduates, there'll be 320,000 climate apprentices. We're also going to plant 2 billion trees, 2 billion that is, by 2040. So according to one of the leading NGOs in this sphere, Friends of the Earth, we have got the greenest manifesto, because we understand it's now or never on climate change. That's why we're aiming for carbon neutrality much earlier than the Tories are. And if that means taking emergency measures, that's what it takes, and we'll take those measures.
Thank you very much. Queenie.
Hello. I feel that there's been a lot of talk for many, many years about the awful 1970s. Now, I remember the 70s. I was there, and it wasn't too bad. What was good about those good old days is that we had milkmen who brought their milk in glass bottles. Imagine the thing. And there was also, we'd all go shopping, and we'd all take our shopping bags with us, which I hope you all do. We wouldn't rely on those plastic bags. And also lots of people had gardens, if you can remember that, but they're now all tarmacked over, so those cars can sit on them. So what we need to do is make every individual person in this country and in the world feel that they can make a difference themselves, and not talk about all the, we do have to push those big companies to make something, but we do need to ensure that we as individuals can feel that we are doing our bit. And quite frankly, we want to waste not, want not. And this is what we need to do. We need to encourage people and give people the opportunity to feel that they are making a difference. So I'm saying, let's look back into the future, back and into the past, to make an impact on the future, which is 2050. It keeps getting bandied around about this 2050. 1970s, let's look back on there and look at what we were doing then and bring it back in and start making those changes. Have gardens, have plant your plants, let's give everyone some free seeds through the post, so they can plant some anywhere. We could throw some seeds everywhere. It doesn't matter, even if you haven't got a garden. Throw it into the hedgerows, and let's get those plants grown for those bees, so then I can have my honey on my toast with my tea. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And finally on this topic, Wes.
Well, I say important. It's important that we realise the seriousness of the climate emergency. absolutely astronomical. Not only will it devastate wildlife, it's going to cause pollution, which causes lung cancer and all sorts. But it's a very serious issue. So setting targets like 2050 gives us a 50-50 chance of getting past it. Well, say getting past it. We're currently in it. And so we've got to push for better. And that's why we're seeking to invest 100 billion in our target of 2030 to be net zero by. And that goes into public transport. It goes into education, research, and all sorts to ensure that we're taking this climate emergency seriously. And yes, we'll have to borrow it. But if we don't, simply put, we might be facing a very chaotic future. I would also like to say it's hard to think that you are the party for the environment when you continue to back HS2 and continue to back airport expansion, as Labour are doing, because these are modes of transport which are deadly polluting. I mean, HS2 is set to be reducing CO2 until 2000, the end of the century, which is beyond me, but friends of the earth.
Thank you. We're going to go to a question sent in by Ben. The EU has one of the most aggressive and ambitious climate change targets in the world, including a 40% greenhouse gas reduction target by 2030. Once we've left the EU, how can you and your parties assure us that the UK will retain its status as an ambitious climate target nation? And we'll start with you, Jane.
Well, I can do, because that's in the plan. So in terms of the net zero emissions by 2050, it'll be legally binding. I'm reading the notes because there's all sorts of things involved in it. But we will be looking to do basically to leave the country in a better state than we found it. And so the target that we would set is a realistic target. I absolutely agree with Wes. We do have to deal with this as quickly as we possibly can. He's absolutely correct. But we also have to be realistic. If we say to people we're going to do something by 2030 and it simply isn't possible from day one, then people will lose faith in it. And so to me, if we say 2050 at the latest, which is what the plan currently says, then to me that is worthwhile and will give people a goal. Just as Queenie Tea said, every individual has the opportunity.
Ian.
Yeah, as with so many things, Brexit is a disaster for the environment. I mean, there's a couple of major points I'd like to raise here. I think what a lot of people are forgetting, or certainly maybe not even be aware, I wasn't until yesterday, but in all of the countries' plans across the world to deliver a carbon neutral world by 2050, carbon sequestration technology is assumed in that. Now, that technology barely exists. And we need to work with partners to develop that technology. So as a European Union, we have European Union-wide research projects. Those projects could help develop that carbon sequestration technology. Also, we all know, or we should all remember, that renewable energy is intermittent. When the wind doesn't blow, the turbines don't turn. When the sun doesn't shine, the solar panels don't work. So there's two aspects to that. One, storage technology. Electricity storage is very difficult. And it's going to take it's just beyond credibility that we could just use batteries to store that technology. So that electricity. So the development of storage technology, again, it should be a European-wide initiative, and an initiative that we can participate in. And then the final aspect of Brexit and the environment is, because of the intermittency of the renewable energy, what we need is interconnectors between ourselves and Europe, so that we can generate, when the wind's blowing like mad in Aberdeen, we can be pumping up hydro storage in Norway. When the wind isn't blowing in the UK, we can be drawing electricity down from other parts of Europe where the renewable circumstances are better. So working together on climate change is so important, and Little England, or Little Britain if it still exists by then, just will not be in a position to achieve what we need to achieve.
Thank you. Queenie.
This may be a strange way of answering the question, because it's not really answering the question. But you see, from my perspective, I don't wish you to vote for me. As I've already explained, I'm a piece of art. And I don't wish to cause offence or undermine the democratic procedures that are happening here. So what I would just like to point out to you is follow your heart, listen to what these people are saying, and judge on that. And remember, there's a song from the 70s, and it's Children Are the Future. And you, young people, are the future, and it will be you that will be making these changes. And one of the things that I would just like to say, and it is off topic, but you may be wondering, how did she get to be sat there? Well, anyone can be sat here, and apart from if you're a policeman or a fireman or you're a teacher or a member of a council. But anybody, if you have £500, you can be sat here. Somebody I know had £500, so you young people are the future. He's a very good example. I don't know what you sold. Was it your organs to be sat there? But everybody out there, even those of you on the online and hanging out your washing online, could you please think about it? Look how many old people we have here. Certainly me. I'm 89. We need more of you young people making a difference, and I would like to see you sat here, and I'll give you the £500, even though I haven't got any money, but I'll find someone who does. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Wes, I'll go very quickly to you, just to confirm you didn't sell your organs to be on stage here today.
Oh, no, I didn't. No, I didn't.
A little clarification there, thank you. And finally, you, Stuart.
I think it's a really great question, because we all know that carbon emissions don't stop at borders, therefore international collaboration is absolutely critical. And with Donald Trump about to pull out of the Paris Climate Accords, it's really important that we act multilaterally. Because we have to reduce emissions by half globally by 2030 to hit that 1.5 degree warming limit, which the scientists say may or may not be safe. We see that it's happening, we need to act urgently. In terms of the European role in this, Europe's action on this is so important, because whilst we can crow about how our emissions have reduced, so many of those have now gone to China. Now, how do we get China to play ball on climate change whilst being our own little entity floating around in the Atlantic? The truth is it can't happen. We've got to be part of that European movement and European collaboration to force global action on climate change, because until China moves, until the USA properly move and are brought back into the fold, then climate change is just going to run away with us. So the European collaboration is absolutely essential. That's why we need that referendum. That's why we need your votes in Loughborough. And that's why we need to remain after that referendum.
And Wes.
I will say that climate change is solved by collaboration. And so the idea that we will be better placed after Brexit, if Brexit goes through, and my God, I hope it doesn't, better placed after Brexit to deal with it is just not true. And we could, working with the EU and forming policies for the democratic process is probably the best way to deal with climate change.
Thank you very much, all of you. We're going to have one last question, one word answer, or one phrase answer each. What are you individually, personally doing to reduce your own carbon footprint? That was sent in by someone from our ethical environmental team here at Loughborough. We'll start with you. Yeah, Jane.
Okay. Got solar panels in my house and a thing that heats the water. My husband's car, I can't afford a car like that, but my husband's car is a hybrid, so it does either one. I use recyclable plastic bags. Yeah, that's about it, I think.
Ian?
Well, I've got a bike. I cycle a lot more, I walk a lot more, and I've now bought this lovely little water bottle, and single-use plastic water bottles are absolutely verboten in our house.
Wes?
I eat meat once a week. I don't own a car because about a third of CO2 emissions from cars, a quarter, is caused when they're made. I've decided to travel home, I live in Portugal, I've decided to travel home by train instead of plane, which can take me approximately a day and a half, instead of flying, which will take me 2 hours.
Walking.
I drive an electric car, the other cars are plug-in hybrid, and I get Wes's point, because actually if we all drove cars, still the carbon footprint would be too ridiculous. We need to get out of our cars and onto bikes. I've got a bike, I use public transport where possible, and I think it's really important that everybody does everything they can Like, for example, I've got an electricity supplier who's completely carbon neutral, Ecotricity. I can recommend them.
Thank you very much to all of you. That's environment done. We're on to our final topic of the evening, which is Loughborough itself. Thank you very much. Our first question on this topic is from the audience. It's from Stuart Ashton, and he's asking a question about Loughborough.
A third of your constituents are students that don't ordinarily live in Loughborough for more than 4 years. How do you plan to cater for this large part of the constituency, knowing their views may change on a yearly basis?
And we'll start with you, Ian.
Well, I suppose delivering all the infrastructure, the public services that any town needs is how we deliver what the students need. And I don't, as students, I'm sure your needs are no different, certainly from what's provided from the public realm than anybody else's. So I think the answer is that we need to invest to improve the public infrastructure, public services and health, for example, in the town.
Jane.
Thank you. As I said, I was a borough councillor here for 12 years, looking after half the campus. And there is a quarterly meeting called the University Liaison Meeting, where the council, the police, various different agencies, student union go there, very, very key partner in that. And of course, the president of the student union attends. And so we try to solve problems there. We try to solve issues that come up. Out of that, over the years, has come a thing called Operation Humble. Don't know if you've heard of that, but as you arrive in Loughborough at the beginning of your stay here, you usually are met with somebody who explains to you about security in the area, about looking after yourselves, about street wardens, about the police and who you can contact, and also about rubbish and what rubbish goes in where, because there's different rubbish bins for different things across the whole country. And also about getting involved in your local communities and getting involved and talking with your neighbours. Now, one of the things that they do as a consequence of that is quite often you become perfectly good friends with your neighbours, and that's absolutely brilliant. And then sometimes you don't. Sometimes there's a difficulty between neighbours and between students, or noise and that kind of thing. So we also work with the security team at the university in order to help that, because the smoothing of the lines between town and gown is extremely important to this town, extremely important. You don't understand how important you are. The university as a whole and individual students are immensely important. I grew up in a town which is very similar to Loughborough, but didn't have a university, and it was boring in comparison. You make an impact on this town every time you're here, every day that you're here. It is a quieter, slightly duller place when you're not here for the 3 months over the summer. So do understand you are extremely, extremely welcome in Loughborough.
Stuart.
It's a great question, Stuart, because I know what a formative and important time this is for all of you. And I'd see it as a core part of my role to serve the rolling cadre of students as they come through. And I've reached out to the LSU. I've formed a good relationship with the management team, Bob and his team. And the things that I say from those meetings is significant investment in mental health services, be that full-on NHS mental health provision or just broader counselling. I'd say I think we need to get students out of their cars and onto their bikes, so a massive infrastructure investment in terms of cycle lanes and things like that, better buses that serve more parts of the town over a longer duration, better services to help you get around. I'd also say that giving you guys the best chance when you come out of university through our major investment programme is a major thing that we can give you, because you're going to have great degrees and great skills. And I'd love you to stay in the area to add value to our local economy. So they're the things that I think I'd provide, but I'd also always be here to reach out to the student body, work collaboratively with the student body and with the Vice-Chancellor and his team to make sure that Loughborough University keeps adding so much to the town as it does at the moment.
Queenie.
Oh, yes, hello. For me, I think it would be that I really only do tea, but I think possibly you might like a stronger drink, and I think you like going out late, having a lovely time. So I think it's at a place called Echoes. So what I would do is I would ensure for all of you that you would come into town, because this is a marvellous place in here. I don't know what it is you do. It feels like a fridge. But I'm sure there's some sort of twist going on that you might do, but perhaps you'd like to go somewhere a little bit different sometimes. So I understand it is Echoes. So what I'm going to say that I might try and do is make it not so sticky. But I don't know how I would do that. So maybe you could help me with that. So that's all I would do, though, I'm afraid.
Obviously, other nightclubs are available. Wes?
Yes. Very rarely. I do agree with Jane. It's talking to students is very important because, as you said, we are a moving group, and I mean, well, you come here first year, you might be here for an extra year on top of that, and then you go off the placement, so you're off somewhere else, and then you come back for your final year or final 2 years. So talking to students is of the utmost importance, and we should ensure, I'm sure all candidates will ensure that we do that. The second thing I will mention is that we have this very odd thing about Loughborough, which is when you arrive in Loughborough, you don't realise it, but Loughborough is a bubble. And as you progress through your university career, you realise that your life almost starts revolving around it. I'm not sure if that might just be me, but a lot of students find that. And so it's treating students as if they are very much part of this town, which I think is very important, and as Stuart said, is providing the services that we need when we need them.
Thank you very much. We have another question from the audience. Thomas, are you here? Fantastic.
Good evening. I used to chair my local authority's youth council, and I saw firsthand how much influence councils have in matters affecting young people, from youth service provision to public transport. And as we live in a democracy, it's important that their voices are heard on these matters. So therefore, do you support the lowering of the voting age to 16 for local council elections?
Thank you. We'll start with you, Queenie.
Well, as I've already said, young people are the future, and you only have to look at someone like the great Thunberg, who has a voice and she's being heard. And I think it would be very important that people listen, and we give everyone the opportunity to be heard and platforms on which to do that. Yes.
Ian?
Absolutely. I think it was very interesting in the Scottish referendum, where the 16-year-olds did have the vote, that they were incredibly well informed. There's this sort of patronising attitude that people under the age of 18 are not mature enough to make decisions, they're not well informed enough. I think that actually should be inverted, because actually, I'll get shot for this, nobody over, because actually at the EU referendum, I think there's a pretty strong argument to say there should have been a cap, not a floor, to the voting age. And in that circumstance, it would appear that having lived longer only narrowed minds rather than broadened them. And certainly, as the younger of you, I mean, goodness knows, by the time you're in your 40s and 50s, Brexit might even have been finished by then, but probably not. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, I work here, I'm a governor at the local college, and I never cease to be impressed by the dedication and intellect of young people. I remember what I was like at 16, and probably I would know it would be totally inappropriate to give me the vote at that time. But I'm, 100%. Yeah, I absolutely agree.
Stuart?
It's Labour Party policy to give votes to 16-year-olds. I think it's a very good idea. Just like Ian, I engage with young people quite regularly, and when you go into sixth forms, you always get great questions, and people are obviously thinking about the issues that are pertinent to them. And plus, I think when you're an educational institution, the teachers can kind of guide you through the process. I think it's a good way to start people off voting, because there are so many doors that I knock on, and people say, oh, but I've never voted. So what better place to start them than in school before they're 18? I'd also like to see other electoral form at local level. I'd like to see proportional representation for local elections, frankly. So we have a more proportionate breakdown of councillors on the local council.
Thank you. And we're going to go to Wes.
Of course, I and Green Party policy back vote 16. It's a question I often ask myself, being a young candidate, is whether I actually know enough. But then I realised sort of pretty early on that you're not taught anything below 18 about politics or taxes or anything of any importance. So you're suddenly expected to have learnt that when you turn 18, which just is, well, a problem of our school system. So yes, I fully support vote 16.
And finally?
I would prefer to stay to 18 across the board, just my personal view. Mainly because of one of the things that Stuart's just said, actually, about teachers helping people with the voting process. Younger than that, I'd like to keep it as independent and have independent thought as humanly possible. However, some of the things I have done is that as I was champion for children and young people at the borough, I was able to hold, and did hold in the town hall, a conference, for example, for young people when we were developing the core strategy, and that's the big plan for the whole borough. And so we had maps and plans, and we were able to then capture all the information that those young people thought about those ideas, and it was interesting to see the differences that they had. So we have done that, and we do that constantly.
Okay, because we're very short on time, we're going to go and continue on to the second penultimate question. Have you got anything from the floor? Has anyone got anything they want to say to the panel as a whole? Yes, you at the back. Yes.
I take real exception to Jane's point. Many schools run mock elections during the election, and that is about helping students to understand what is involved. The teachers do not tell students what to vote, but they do help guide them through the actual process, and I think that's what Ian meant. And as a teacher, I find that quite offensive.
Do we have any other questions from the audience before we go to the panel to answer them in bulk? Any other questions? Yes, you there. Yeah.
Right. In America, they pay $38,000 for the same drug that cost the NHS £2,000 and me £0. It's the same drug that keeps me alive that I have to take every 2 months, and for asthma, something that people don't even realise kills. Under a no-deal Brexit, which is something that the Tory government are okay with, we'd be going into trade deals with America. Do you really think that putting us under that risk for that price for medication is something that's really safe for the children that you're saying you care about, that you want to keep alive, and yet you're perfectly willing to sell off our drug contracts to somebody like America, where they pay that much more for drugs that save lives every single day? Do you really think that that is safe and okay?
And do we have any final points that anyone in the audience would like to make? Yes, you say at the back.
I just think it's a bit rich hearing Jane Hunt talk about the environment with a straight face when your leader, Prime Minister Johnson, couldn't actually be bothered to turn up to the first ever climate debate. You talk about 2050 as an ambitious plan, but you're not actually on target to even hit 2050. And actually, the Conservative Party has never cared about the environment. It never will. It's said that it's going to ban fracking, but actually it's left the back door open for more fracking, more sites, and I don't see how anyone can trust the Conservatives on the environment.
Okay, thank you from the audience for those 2 questions. We've got 3 small topics there. We've got the NHS, we've got schools, and we've got the environment. We'll start with you, Jane, as obviously you mentioned there last, and we'll go very quickly through the panel. Try and garner as much of that opinion as you can.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me go to the NHS question first. The NHS is not for sale. The NHS contracts and for drugs are not for sale. It is a complete misnomer. It's designed to move this general election onto a different platform to sideline people. You are an extremely important person. You have asthma. This country and the NHS will look after you, and it will be free at the point of use. So don't worry about that. In terms of the environment, forgive me, I just have to disagree with you, given we are the first country in the world to have set a climate change target and we're going to put it into law. So, sorry, I just have to disagree. Thanks.
Ian.
Yeah, well, we had an NHS hustings this afternoon and this topic came up. So I'll rehearse some of the points that's made then. I mean, yes, of course, I think it's highly unlikely the NHS per se will be sold off to America, but it doesn't need to be. The point about drugs is 100% right. South Korea did a trade deal with America. South Korea's drug prices went up considerably as a consequence of that. So it's not fear-mongering, it's just what will happen. Yeah, be right, I mean, it's absolutely beyond question. And we should remember that the grossly and horrifically inefficient American health service, where they spend nearly 20% of their national income on health to get worse outcomes than we get here, where in Alabama the perinatal death rate is worse than Botswana. Just let that sink in for a minute. So, when you have a sector that comprises 20% of the economy and you have a culture of lobbying, as America does, the American drug industry will have enormous sway over the way that Trump, well, he won't negotiate. He won't negotiate. The American economy is vastly bigger than Britain. We will be going over there on bended knees, begging him to do a free trade deal, and he will hammer us. And there's no way he's going to hammer us and not hammer us on drugs. Trump has said time and again that the American taxpayer, the American insurance companies, if you will, the Americans are subsidising the rest of the world's drugs prices. That's his view of the world. Actually, they're just so incompetent and inept they pay through the nose, but that's by the by. So they will absolutely demand that the drugs prices go up.
Ian, thank you very much. Wes?
We have 3 questions. The first one, schools, I agree with you. My teachers were always just impartial as we were going about stuff like that. So, yes, thank you. Drugs, that is the problem with the deal on the table at the moment, is that it opens us up to this sort of action. And as Ian said, that's what America do. They like to bully the rest of the world. So I too am terrified and think the best way of avoiding that is simply by remaining in the EU. And then your point on the environment, I wholeheartedly agree with you. I can't agree with you more.
Queenie?
Yes, so distrust in teachers is very worrying. And I'm going to leave it to the professionals to answer, because these are very important questions to people.
So finally, Stuart.
Yeah, I'm sorry you had your professional integrity impugned there. I was the one who raised it. It was Stuart, not Ian, by the way. It's interesting what you say about Boris Johnson not turning up to the climate debate, because Save Our NHS held a debate here in Loughborough today, and all the candidates from the parties were there, apart from Jane, the Conservative candidate. I don't know the reasons for that, but I think it's pretty telling. And I used to work on trade policy, so I can tell you that when the US negotiates a trade agreement, Congress has a significant role in determining what the mandate is. Congress is completely permeated by lobbyists, lots of lobbyists from the pharmaceutical companies. Now, we will be cast adrift from the European Union, going to the US with a begging bowl, asking for a trade agreement. And those lobbyists will damn well be wanting pharmaceutical pricing to be on the table during those negotiations. And revelations have shown, Channel 4 did some great journalistic work to show that these conversations have been going on for a few years now, and those documents have been covered during this election campaign. So it's a real worry, and that's why we need that referendum. And that's why here, people's vote are saying, vote for me, because we are the support party supporting who can win. It's a straight Tory, Labour fight here. On climate change, I couldn't agree more. Jane said that the legally binding targets were somehow a Conservative invention. Well, actually weren't. Labour government was the first party to have legally binding targets on climate change. And we are the party that's pushing, as Friends of the Earth said, for the most ambitious climate policies going.
Stuart, thank you very much. And thank you to our panel for all of the answers to the questions today. We are going to have you one more question each, though, and I expect a one-sentence, one-thing answer each from this. And we'll start with you, Queenie, on this one. The question is, what one thing would you do to improve the relationship between the students and the members of the town in Loughborough? What one thing?
I'd offer tea biscuits.
Wes?
Well, that's a tough one. So I know why the problems are there, because I'm both a student and a resident. I think the biggest thing, is knowledge for the students. I'll give an example, is that I didn't know that riding your bike through town, as in the centre of town where the market is, can be fined on market day, and I've been here for 4 years.
Thank you. Stuart?
Well, I used to play professional rugby for Saracens, so I love sport. And I think sport can be the big unifying thing between this university and town. I'd like all the kids in town to be wearing Loughborough University sports stash, to be up here supporting all the teams, to be doing curtain raisers, and for the students to be down there coaching all the kids, making sure that they're going to be nice and fit and healthy for the future. So I think sport is the thing that's going to bring the town together in a really positive way.
Jane?
Working together, and particularly understanding the A-team and what they do for the town, getting the town to understand what students do for this town.
And finally, Ian.
Thank you. Absolutely. I mean, I think Stuart's absolutely right. I mean, this Loughborough University is such a wonderful international brand. I mean, I'm a governor across the road, and I just point out that most of the Olympians went there, but no, don't worry about that. But I think what this university particularly, and also in conjunction with its close friend and neighbour, have done for this town, for its reputation. I forget where we sit in the Olympic League table as a town, but it's ahead of many, many countries. So I think we need to get out there and tell the story about what a wonderful set of academic institutions we've got in this town. The wonderful engineering, the discoveries, the new industries, the science park, and Loughborough Lightning and all the rest of it. Let's sell the story more, because people don't understand that. And it's a shame perhaps that the local newspaper, whenever I see the university mentioned, wants to hear about the odd student who threw up in a dustbin. Well, who cares? You know, we're all young once. I never went to university and I certainly threw up in a dustbin. So, you know, so keep doing what you're doing. Let's get your story sold out to the town. And yes, please, you know, do listen to what the town's people say, because actually it's not very nice to throw up in somebody's dustbin. But keep doing what you're doing. Tell everybody what you're doing, and thank you for doing it.
Thank you very much. All of our candidates today, they're all obviously running to be your MP, and they've got one final thing they'd like to tell you. We'll start with you, Jane, and we'll go down to Stuart.
This is your opportunity. This is your opportunity to vote Conservative next Thursday and to have a brighter future, a better future for this country. To understand and have a better understanding of what's going on for you and in this country and across the world, to have global opportunities for your career and your future. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, this is absolutely your last opportunity to stop Brexit. The Institute of Fiscal Studies agrees with us that if we stop Brexit, we'll actually create 50 billion of additional revenue for the government over 3 years, revenue that we'll spend on ending the 5-week wait for universal credit, for investing in our schools, investing in our education, investing in lifelong learning, because the skills that you leave university with are highly unlikely to be the skills that you'll need when you're 40, 60.
Ian, thank you very much.
Oh, sorry.
I'll end by simply saying this is the climate election. The UN gave us 18 months to take radical steps to make radical changes in environmental policy. That was 4 months ago. So I will leave you with a quote from David Attenborough: "We simply cannot be radical enough." Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, goodness, sorry. Oh, there's lots of cuts on the floor. Oh, well, they're useless, aren't they? That's made us all a little bit useless. Well, you see, here we have a new piece of string, and that's your future. And let's try and make sure that we don't make too many cuts to this one, okay? Now, what I'd just quickly like to say is don't vote for me. What you need to do is listen to these people. You need to stop, and you need to look left, you need to look right, You need to look left again.
Thank you.
You do want to look right, but don't look too far right round the corner, okay? And then also, I'm going to continue. You could stay in the centre. What we do have is Wesley on his bike, which is lovely. We have Stuart in his electric car. I think you are in a blue car, absolutely. And what's lovely is he's in a yellow car, and we play a game with the yellow cars, don't we? We all play a game, and they wave at each other. And it doesn't matter, you can't stop me because I'm louder than the microphone. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Your 30 seconds, Stuart.
Well, as you walk down Loughborough High Street, contemplating your £44,000 average debt, seeing the boarded up shops, seeing the homeless people, thinking about your friend who can't get the help they need because of the cuts to mental health services, think we're the 6th largest economy in the world. Can we do better than this? And the answer is yes. Because many of you have only known 9 years of Tory government, and it's their cuts that have led us to this situation where pay hasn't gone up for 10 years, where public services are on their knees.
Thank you, Stuart.
We've got a positive platform. So if you want that vote on Brexit, if you want decisive action on climate change, you've got to vote Labour. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much to all of our candidates on stage today. Give a massive round of applause. Thank you very much to everyone who's come here down today and who've been watching at home. Make sure you stick around if you're watching at home to hear the reaction to this with our panel later on this evening. Use the hashtag LSU Debate to comment online and on Twitter. And obviously make sure you tune in on Thursday from 11 PM where we'll have live election results here from LSU. But also, most importantly, make sure on Thursday you go out, have your say and vote in the general election. It's a night that might determine our country in the way that it will be for the next 5 years. Vote responsibly, absolutely. That's all from us here on the stage in Room 1. Thank you all very much for watching. Good night.
Well, it's been a roller coaster of a night here in Room 1. The candidates said all they can say. We want to know how you feel the candidates did. Did any of them change your vote? Let us know by tweeting us at LSU Media using the hashtag LSU Debate. I should be joined here by Belle Holland, Joe Dean and Jack Martin, but they're all currently sat at the back of the room going to the toilet. But let's start with Stuart Brady's opening statement.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks so much for coming. This election is for your future. And that's why you need to stay here and vote on Thursday and vote Labour. It's a two-horse race in Loughborough between me and the Conservative candidate. We are offering you another say on Brexit. We are offering you the most decisive action on climate change of any of the parties. We are offering you a tuition fee policy that gets rid of tuition fees for any remaining years you have in university. There are 3 fully costed policies. And importantly, we're going to take action to save our NHS. We know we've got a mental health crisis and Labour's going to address it.
So we're back now. They're literally just walking over here. If I can get them to come a bit quicker. Literally just there.
Any particular order?
No, that's fine. Belle, we'll start with you. Is it safe to say that you've been a key player of the Labour Party's campaign here in Loughborough? You've been working very closely with Stuart over the past few weeks. How do you feel he's performed tonight?
I think he performed really, really well. I've been campaigning with Stuart for a long, long time now, and not long ago I texted him saying, "Stuart, you better win this campaign because I've put in so many hours to this." And he says, he doesn't win, we all win when he wins. So the doctors, the nurses, the firemen, the police officers, we all win when he wins for Loughborough. So I think he did really well tonight, and I really felt the passion that came across in him when he spoke.
Lovely, thank you. And we'll now go to Jane Hunt's opening statement.
Thank you very much. Hello, I'm Jane Hunt. I am local. I've lived here since 1995, and during that time I've been the Borough Councillor in Loughborough and Panton Ward for 12 years, between 2003 and 2015, and that is half the campus. So I have been the Borough Councillor for half the campus for 12 years during that time. I want to make you an offer. Inward investment is one of the things I look after at the Borough Council, and inward investment is about brains, skills and knowledge, and we want to keep you in Loughborough. Please, please do let me know what exactly you would like from the area so that we can get you to stay here, keep your businesses here, keep your brains here, and form businesses here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jane entered the race rather unexpectedly, I think it's safe to say, after Nicky Morgan announced that she was stepping down. Bearing that in mind, Joe, how do you feel she performed in the debate tonight?
Oh, I think she performed very well, and to say that Jane is a complete novice is entirely wrong. I mean, she's been a local councillor for 20 years, she's served various parts of Loughborough, she's worked as Nicky's sort of right-hand person for 9 years. She knows exactly what she's doing, and she's got very clear policy. She was very clear in what she was saying today. I thought she performed very well.
Lovely, thank you. So, Jack, I'm sure you've watched this debate very closely, looking for any mistakes, blunders, and possibly some memes. What do you think of the debate as a whole, and will we be seeing any memes later tonight?
Well, I think the debate went really well, actually. I think everyone got their point across quite well. Queenie performed exceptionally, I would say. I wasn't expecting much, but she did very well. Yeah, and I think that it was conducted respectfully, and I think we might see something, maybe. Right. Maybe Queenie will deliver.
Let's now see the opening statement by Wes Walton.
Strive for a future where we cooperate with other nations to solve the problems that we face. A future where individuals feel empowered by the government, not forever let down. A future where quality of life and happiness are put at the heart of policy making and not forever chasing economic growth and GDP.
A question for all of you now. How do you feel with Wesley being a student and therefore possibly more relatable to the student body? Do you think that will have an impact in this election? We'll start with you.
I think he did really, really well. As a student, he can hear our concerns and speak up on behalf of us. Many issues that face students are climate change, poor provisions for mental health in the NHS, student tuition fees. I personally calculated mine tonight as about £70,000. So he really spoke up on those issues. I think he did really, really well.
Joe?
I think obviously as a student he has various advantages in terms of being more relatable to the student, in terms of he's been through what we're going through at the moment. But in terms of policies and parties, I really don't think it makes a tremendous amount of difference. I think if you are clearly a Green Party supporter, I don't think you're really going to change your mind bearing on how old the candidate is. All the candidates are credible in their own way, for their own policies, to an extent, but not tremendously.
And Jack?
I think it was a massive thing for him to go up on the stage tonight and run the whole campaign, pretty much. I think that hopefully it'll inspire more people who is in this room tonight to run maybe one day and to get more involved. And I hope that he does well, really.
That's great. And now, moving on to Ian Sharpe's opening statement, let's take a look.
I'm Ian Sharpe, I'm the Liberal Democrat candidate, and only a few months ago in the Euro elections, Loughborough voted us the most important Remain party, and in fact we got twice the votes that the Labour Party got. So thanks, Stuart, but we do this every time, he knows what I'm going to say. Right, so I'm standing to fight for the NHS and social care, to fight for our schools, colleges, universities and for lifelong learning, to fight the mess in universal credit, to fight climate change and to fight Brexit. I'm Ian Sharpe, I'm your Liberal Democrat Remain candidate.
Okay, So Ian's been involved in politics since the 1970s, it says so on his website. Has the political landscape changed in that time? And do you think this has affected his performance tonight? Jack, we'll start with you.
I think that it's not necessarily a bad thing to be involved for so long, because obviously you'll have a massive body of experience when it comes to politics, but I think sometimes it may be time for a new generation to take over, really.
I find it ironic, the question, to be quite honest with you, because he was going on about how, for voting, that there should be a ceiling for ages of voting. So to say there should be ages of candidates, I really don't think that aligns. He clearly has experience in terms of being a politician for that long. It can be good and bad. You can't, obviously, you've got one end of the spectrum with Wesley in terms of just starting his life in politics, and then you've got Ian as well. So I really don't think it makes a tremendous amount of difference. I think the policies that the person is saying make the most difference.
And Belle?
I think he's been in politics for enough time to see how England, or Great Britain really, has transformed. I wouldn't say he's too old or too out of touch. It's up to each individual to decide what they take away from what he said. What he said should have made an impact to them, and they should take away from that. Yeah, he might be a bit older than some of the other candidates, but what he had to say had meaning behind it. So
that's great. So finally, let's look at Queenie Tea's opening statement.
Queenie Tea.
Yeah. Okay. Just got my mouth full of biscuit. Sorry. So, hello. I'm Queenie Tea, and on the 12th of December, I'm going to be having a party, as are all the rest of these lovely folk. And what I'd like you to do is, if none of these parties, now they're very good at parties, Jane down there has been having a good party for about 9 years. Then we have Wesley. He's really good at parties because he's a student. And then we have Ian and Stuart. Now they're new to running parties, but I imagine they're very good on the dance floor.
Thank you very much.
So thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Well, Queenie Tea is an interesting candidate, to say the least. Do you feel that it's been quite refreshing to have these kind of candidates running in general elections? We'll start with you.
I think that we definitely need these sort of candidates, because what would the world be without a little bit of humour in everything? I think that it's positive in the fact that £500 goes to tax, obviously, because I doubt she'll get a deposit back. But yeah, third parties are so important because we're not America. It's not just red and blue. It's red, blue, green, yellow, purple, light blue, you know?
Belle, we'll go to you.
I think it's really important that Queenie Tea is standing to show that anyone can take part in democracy if they have 500 quid and nice biscuits, apparently. And I really hope she enjoys herself in this campaign. She's put in a lot of effort, and I think she's done brilliantly to show there's a humorous side as well to this. In terms of other people getting involved, as Jack said, we're not like America. We have multi-parties in this democracy, and I think this election has shown that it's no longer a race between Conservatives and Labour. It's a lot of the smaller parties are now rising up through the ranks, so that's another important aspect to consider.
And Joe?
Oh, I think it's a great advert for British politics. I love it's just the fun aspect. I mean, what did we have in the last election? We had the fish finger, and this time we've got Count Binface. I mean, where else do you get this? It's great fun. I mean, you look around the world. Yes, you've got obviously the serious debate, but it can be quite dull, and I think it really makes British politics stand out. Yes, it's completely senseless at times in the fact that you might think that she's got no chance of winning, but I think it's great fun, and to echo what Belle said, it means that anybody can take part in British politics and anybody can theoretically win.
That's lovely. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you all for coming tonight. I think we've learned a lot from this debate, and hopefully see you guys on the campaign trail, apart from you, Jack, who will be sending the memes in. So that's all the time we have for tonight. Make sure you go down to your local polling stations and vote on the 12th of December. Also, make sure you tune in on Thursday evening when we'll be holding a live results night show here on LSU Media. Thank you for joining us. Good night.